The sky burned orange and red above the Valari homeworld. Ships fell from the clouds like dying birds. Fires spread across the great forests where Ren's ancestors had hunted for 10,000 years. Everything his people had built was turning to ash. Alpha Ren stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his world die. He was tall, even for a Valari. His fur was gray now, marked with the scars of many battles. His golden eyes reflected the flames below. Around him, his crew worked in silence. They all knew the truth. This was the end. The Dominion had come for them at last. For 20 years, the Reptilian Empire had hunted the Valari across the stars. They called the wolf-like species dangerous. They called them a threat. But Ren knew the real reason. The Dominion feared anything with fangs and claws. They feared anything that might one day challenge their rule. So they decided to destroy the Valari completely, and they had almost succeeded. Ren turned away from the window. His heart was heavy, but his mind was clear. He had made his choice hours ago. Now he had to see it through. He walked through the ship's corridors. The metal walls were dented and burned. The lights flickered. His flagship had fought in 100 battles, and it showed. But it still flew. That was all that mattered now. He reached the cargo hold and stopped at the door. He took a deep breath. Then he stepped inside. 12 cubs looked up at him. They were young, most of them no older than 5 years. Their fur was soft, their eyes wide with fear. They huddled together in the corner of the hold, pressed against each other for warmth and comfort. These were the last children of the Valari people. Ren knelt before them. His massive frame cast a shadow over their small bodies. He wanted to tell them everything would be fine. He wanted to promise them safety and happiness. But he could not lie to them. Not now. I am taking you somewhere safe, he said. His voice was gentle, softer than anyone who knew him would expect. You will not see me again after tonight, but you will live. That is the only thing that matters. The small female cub crawled forward. She was braver than the others. Her name was Kira, and she had her mother's eyes. Where are we going, Alpha? Ren smiled sadly. To Earth, to the humans. The cubs looked at each other. They had heard stories about humans. Everyone in the galaxy had heard stories. The humans were strange creatures from a small blue world. They had no claws, no fangs, no scales. They were soft and weak by galactic standards. But 300 years ago, they had done something impossible. They had defeated a Dominion invasion fleet. Not just defeated them. Destroyed them. And the Dominion had never tried again. Nobody knew exactly how the humans had won. The Dominion refused to speak of it. But Ren had heard whispers. The humans did not fight like other species. They did not surrender when the battle turned against them. They did not accept defeat even when defeat was certain. They were stubborn and foolish and absolutely terrifying because of it. Ren hoped the stories were true. He had no other choice but to hope. The journey took 3 days. His damaged ship limped through jump gate after jump gate, always one step ahead of the Dominion hunters. Ren did not sleep. He stood on the bridge and watched the stars pass by. He thought about his mate, who had died defending the nursery ships. He thought about his warriors, who had given their lives to buy him time. He thought about everything his people had lost. When they finally emerged in the Sol system, Ren felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. Earth hung in the darkness like a blue jewel. It was small, much smaller than the Valari homeworld. But it was beautiful. Clouds swirled across its surface. Green and brown continents peeked through the white. Ren opened a channel and broadcast on all frequencies. His voice was tired but steady. I am Ren of the Valari. My people die tonight. I carry our final children. I ask nothing for myself. I ask only that you raise them. Teach them. Let them live. For a long moment, there was only silence. Ren's heart pounded in his chest. What if the humans refused? What if they turned him away? What would he do then? Then a voice came through the speakers. It was a female human, calm and kind. Bring them down, Alpha. We will take care of your cubs. Ren closed his eyes. For the first time in months, he let himself breathe. He landed his ship in a place the humans called Korea. The night air was cool and filled with strange scents. Ren carried the cubs down the boarding ramp one by one. They clung to his fur and whimpered, but they did not cry. 2 humans waited for them at the bottom. One was a woman with gray hair and gentle eyes. Her name was Yuna, and she was a scientist who studied alien life. The other was a man in a military uniform. His name was Taiho, and he stood straight and proud despite being half Ren's size. They did not show fear. They did not reach for weapons. They simply waited, patient and calm. Ren placed the last cub on the ground. Then he knelt before the humans. He put his massive paw over his heart. This was the Valari gesture of deepest trust. I give them to you, he said. Raise them as your own. And if the stars are kind, perhaps one day they will return to avenge us. Yuna stepped forward. She placed her small hand over Ren's paw. We will protect them, she said. I promise you. Ren looked at his cubs one final time. Kira stood at the front, watching him with those brave, familiar eyes. He wanted to stay. He wanted to watch them grow. But his duty was not finished. He stood and walked back to his ship. By morning, he was gone, flying toward the last battle of his people. The cubs stayed behind. Their new life had begun. 15 years passed like water through a river. The 12 cubs who had arrived on Earth as frightened children were now strong adults. They had grown tall and powerful, with thick fur and sharp claws. But they were not the same creatures their father had left behind. They were something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. They were Valari raised by humans. Kira woke early every morning. In the small apartment she shared with Yuna, the old woman had become her mother in all the ways that mattered. Yuna had taught her to read and write. She had held her during nightmares. She had celebrated every small victory and comforted every small failure. When Kira decided to study medicine, Yuna had cried with pride. Now Kira worked at the biggest hospital in Bazan. She was the first alien doctor in Earth's history. At first, the human patients were afraid of her. They saw her claws and her fangs and her golden eyes, and they thought she was dangerous. But Kira was patient. She spoke softly. She moved slowly, and she healed them. One day, a little girl came to the hospital with a broken arm. She screamed when she saw Kira, but Kira knelt down and smiled gently. I know I look scary, she said, but I promise I am here to help you. Will you trust me? The little girl stopped crying. She looked at Kira for a long moment. Then she nodded. After that day, the girl told everyone that the wolf doctor had fixed her arm. Soon, patients started asking for Kira by name. They learned what Yuna had always known. Kira was gentle. Kira was kind. Kira would never hurt anyone who did not deserve it. Juri's path was different. He had always been bigger than the other cubs, stronger and faster. When he was 14, Taiho began training him. The old soldier taught him how to fight like a human, not with claws and teeth, but with strategy and patience. He taught him that true strength was not in the body, but in the mind. Juri joined the United Earth Defense Force on his 18th birthday. He was the first Valari soldier in human history. His squad mates were nervous around him at first. They had never fought beside an alien before. But Juri proved himself quickly. He trained harder than anyone. He followed orders without complaint. And when danger came, he put himself between his teammates and harmed. His best friend was a human woman named Ga. She was small and quiet, with short black hair and quick eyes. She had grown up poor in a small village. The military had given her a chance at a better life, and she had grabbed it with both hands. She was the best shot in the entire unit, and she never let anyone forget it. GA and Dury made a strange pair. She was half his size. She could not run as fast or hit as hard. But she was clever in ways that surprised him. She saw things he missed. She thought of solutions he never imagined. Together, they were unstoppable. "You know," Jihei said one night, "you are not what I expected." Dury tilted his head. "What did you expect?" "A monster." She smiled. "But you are just a big puppy." Dury growled, but there was no anger in it. "I am a wolf, sure you are." Jihei punched his arm. It was like punching a wall. A very fluffy wolf. Bora was the youngest of the 12. She had been only 3 years old when Ren brought her to Earth. She barely remembered her homeworld. Her earliest memories were of Yuna's apartment, of the smell of Korean food cooking, of the sound of human laughter. Bora loved machines. When she was young, she would take apart everything she could find. Radios, computers. Once, she even took apart Yuna's car. Yuna had been angry at first, but when she saw how carefully Bora had organized all the pieces, she laughed instead. "You have a gift," Yuna told her. "Do not waste it." Bora did not waste it. She studied engineering at the best university in Korea. She learned how human technology worked. Then she started to improve it. She combined human science with Valari biology. She built machines that could think, that could adapt, that could heal themselves. Her greatest creation was a ship. It was small, barely bigger than a shuttle, but it moved like a living thing. It responded to commands before they were given. It learned from every battle and grew stronger. When the military saw what she had built, they offered her a job immediately. Every year, on the anniversary of Ren's arrival, the 12 gathered together. Yuna would cook a feast. Taiho would open his best bottles of wine, and they would tell stories about their father. "He was so brave," Kira would say. "He gave us everything so we could live." "He was a true alpha," Dury would add. "I hope I can be half the warrior he was." Bora said little during these gatherings. She was the youngest. She had the fewest memories. But she listened carefully to every word. On the 50th anniversary, something changed. The 12 gathered at the landing site where Ren's ship had touched down so many years ago. The ground was covered with grass now. A small monument stood in the center, carved with Valari symbols. Kira looked at her brothers and sisters. They were not cubs anymore. They were warriors, healers, builders, thinkers. They had learned everything the humans could teach them. They had grown strong in body and mind. And they had never forgotten where they came from. "We have lived good lives here," Kira said. "The humans gave us everything. They raised us. They loved us. They taught us what it means to be truly strong." She paused. Her golden eyes swept across the faces of her family. "But we cannot stay here forever. Out there, in the stars, others suffer the way our people suffered. Other species are being hunted and enslaved and destroyed. The Dominion is still out there, and they think no one can stop them." She stood straighter. Her claws gleamed in the moonlight. "They are wrong. We are going to stop them. Not for revenge. Not for hatred. But because it is right. Because the humans taught us that protecting the innocent is the most important thing anyone can do." Dury stepped forward. "I am with you, sister." Bora nodded. "I will build us a fleet." One by one, all 12 pledged themselves to the cause. Yuna watched from the edge of the gathering, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. Taiho stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "They are ready," he said quietly. Yuna wiped her eyes. Ren would be so proud. Kira turned to face the stars. Somewhere out there, her father had died fighting an impossible war. Now it was her turn to fight. But she would not fight alone. She had her pack. She had her human family. And she had 15 years of human knowledge burning in her mind. "It is time to go home," she said. The war was about to begin. The space station called the Crucible floated in the darkness between stars. It was massive, bigger than most cities. Thousands of ships docked at its ports every day. Traders came to buy and sell goods from across the galaxy. But the Crucible was famous for something else. Something darker. It was the largest slave market in Dominion space. Every week, ships arrived carrying captured prisoners. They came from dozens of species. Some had been taken from conquered worlds. Others had been born in chains, never knowing freedom. They were sorted, tagged, and sold to the highest bidder. The Dominion called it commerce. Everyone else called it evil. For 15 years, no one had challenged the Crucible. The Dominion fleet protected it. Anyone who tried to attack it was destroyed quickly and completely. The slaves inside had given up hope. They believed no one would ever come for them. They were wrong. Kira's fleet emerged from jump space like wolves from a forest. There were only 20 ships, but they moved with perfect coordination. They had trained for months in the empty spaces beyond human territory. They had practiced every formation, every attack pattern, every possible response. They were ready. Kira stood on the bridge of her flagship. She had named it Ren's Promise after her father. The ship was Bora's finest creation. It was fast and deadly and almost alive. It responded to Kira's thoughts as if it could read her mind. "All ships report ready," said her communications officer. Kira nodded. "Begin the attack." The Dominion defenders scrambled to respond. There were 50 ships guarding the Crucible, more than double Kira's numbers. Their commander was confident. He had crushed many rebellions before. This would be no different. He was wrong about that too. Kira's ships did not attack head-on like the Dominion expected. They split into small groups and struck from multiple angles. When the defenders turned to face one threat, another appeared behind them. When they gathered together, Kira's ships scattered like leaves in the wind. It was not how aliens fought. It was how humans fought. Kira had studied human military history for years. She had learned about guerrilla warfare. She had learned about patience and deception. She had learned that a smaller force could defeat a larger one if it was smart enough. The battle lasted 4 hours. By the end, 30 Dominion ships were destroyed or disabled. Kira had lost only 3, but the real battle was just beginning. Duri led the boarding party onto the Crucible. He wore heavy armor painted with the symbol of his pack. Behind him came 50 soldiers, both Valari and human. They had trained together for months. They trusted each other completely. Gia walked at his side, her rifle ready. She was calm and focused. She had fought in many battles during her years in the military. But this felt different. This was not about politics or territory. This was about freedom. The station's corridors were dark and narrow. The defenders had cut the lights, hoping the darkness would give them an advantage. They did not understand what they were facing. The Valari could see perfectly in the dark. Their eyes glowed golden as they stalked through the shadows. "Contact ahead," Duri said quietly. His ears twitched. He could hear the enemy before he saw them. 10 Dominion soldiers waited around the next corner. They were reptilian, covered in green scales, carrying plasma rifles. They thought they were well hidden. They were wrong. Duri moved first. He was a blur of gray fur and gleaming claws. 2 soldiers fell before they could fire a single shot. The others turned, panicked, but it was already too late. GA and the team hit them from behind. In seconds, the corridor was silent again. They pushed deeper into the station. They fought through checkpoints and guard posts. They disabled security systems and broke through locked doors. Nothing could stop them. Finally, they reached the central holding cells. Dury had seen many terrible things in his life, but nothing had prepared him for this. Hundreds of prisoners filled the cells. They were thin and weak. Their fur was matted. Their feathers were broken. Their skin was covered with scars. They stared at Dury with empty eyes. They had forgotten what hope looked like. Dury walked to the nearest cell. Inside, a family huddled together. The father was tall and silver-furred, his body bent with age. The mother held two children close to her chest. They flinched when Dury approached. He did not reach for his weapon. He did not growl or show his fangs. Instead, he knelt before the cell door. He looked the father in the eyes. "You are safe now," he said. "We are here to take you home." The father stared at him. His eyes widened with recognition. "You are Valari, but the Valari are dead. We watched them die." Dury placed his paw over his heart. 12 of us lived. Humans raised us. And now we have come back. He reached up and tore the cell door from its frame. The metal screamed as it bent and broke. Dury tossed it aside like it weighed nothing. The father stepped forward slowly. Tears streamed down his face. "After all these years, after everything the Dominion took from us, you came back." Dury stood and helped the old man out of the cell. "We came back. And we brought friends." Gia moved through the cells, speaking to the prisoners in a dozen different languages. She was calm and gentle. She helped the weak stand. She carried the children who could not walk. She treated every prisoner with dignity and respect. 342 slaves were freed that day. They came from 18 different species. Some had been prisoners for decades. They had given up hope of ever seeing freedom again. Now they stood in the corridors of the crucible, breathing free air for the first time in years. Kira's voice crackled over the communication system. "Dury, we need to move. Dominion reinforcements are coming." Dury nodded. "Get everyone to the ships. We are leaving." The evacuation was fast but orderly. The freed slaves were loaded onto transport ships. The wounded were treated by medics. Within 2 hours, the entire coalition force had withdrawn from the crucible dot as they jumped away. Kira looked back at the station. It still floated in the darkness, but it was crippled. Its defenses were destroyed. Its guards were scattered. For the first time in its history, the crucible had been defeated. News of the attack spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Slaves on distant worlds whispered to each other. Resistance fighters who had given up hope began to believe again. The Dominion was not invincible. Someone had struck back and won. On her flagship, Kira watched the communications channels fill with messages. Species she had never heard of were reaching out. They wanted to know who had attacked the crucible. They wanted to know if there was more coming. She smiled, showing her fangs. This was only the beginning. The Dominion was furious. For 300 years, they had ruled their empire without challenge. They had crushed rebellions and destroyed armies. They had taught the galaxy to fear them. And now, a handful of ships led by creatures they thought extinct had humiliated them. The supreme commander of the Dominion fleet slammed his fist against his throne. His scales were deep red, the color of anger among his people. His advisors cowered before him. "Find them," he hissed. "Find them and destroy them. I want every ship in the Third Fleet hunting these animals." 200 warships launched from Dominion space. It was the largest force they had sent after any enemy in decades. Their mission was simple: hunt down the rebels. Kill everyone. Leave no survivors. But Kira had planned for this. She did not run and hide. She ran and led. Her small fleet appeared at the edge of Dominion space, just close enough to be seen. The Third Fleet gave chase immediately. They were bigger and faster and more powerful. Catching these rebels would be easy. It was not easy. Every time the Dominion got close, Kira's ships slipped away. They jumped through dead systems and abandoned stations. They used asteroids and gas clouds to hide their trail. They never stayed in one place long enough to be caught. The Dominion commanders grew frustrated, then angry, then reckless. They pushed their ships harder and harder, burning fuel and wearing down their crews. They were so focused on the chase that they did not notice where they were being led. Meanwhile, Bora was busy. She traveled to the far corners of the galaxy, visiting the hidden places where conquered species had fled. There were more of them than anyone knew. Small colonies on forgotten moons, refugee stations in empty space, resistance cells that had fought for generations. Bora carried a simple message to all of them. "Join us," she said. "Fight with us, or remain slaves forever." The response was overwhelming. The Karathi came first. They were a feline species, tall and graceful, with fur that ranged from golden to black. Once, they had ruled a powerful empire. The Dominion had destroyed it and scattered the survivors across the stars. Now the Karathi worked as mercenaries, selling their skills to whoever would pay. Their leader was a female named Sora. She was old and scarred, with one eye missing from a battle long ago. She listened to Bora's message in silence. Then she laughed. "For 20 years, I have dreamed of fighting the Dominion again," Sora said. "I thought I would die before I got the chance. It seems I was wrong." She stood and drew her blade. "The Karathi will fight." The Mirren came next. They were amphibians, small and green, with bulging eyes and delicate hands. They were not warriors. They were scientists. The Dominion had poisoned their homeworld with toxic mining operations. Now they lived in domed cities beneath foreign oceans, slowly dying of pollution-related diseases. Their representative was a young male named Haniel. He was brilliant but angry. He had watched his people suffer for too long. "We cannot fight in your battles," Haniel said. "But we can build weapons. We can heal your wounded. We can give you technology the Dominion has never seen." Bora shook his hand. "That is more than enough." The Vox were harder to convince. They were avians with bright feathers and hollow bones. They had evolved to fly through the endless skies of their homeworld. When the Dominion conquered them, they clipped their wings and forced them to work in underground mines. Now the Vox lived in cages, their spirits broken along with their feathers. But some still remembered what it felt like to fly. When Bora offered them a chance to fight back, they spread their tattered wings and screamed with joy. "We will be your pilots," their leader promised. "We will fill your skies with fire." Even some Dominion soldiers defected. They were reptilians who had grown sick of their empire's cruelty. They had seen too many innocents die. They had followed too many evil orders. When they heard about the rebellion, they slipped away in the night and offered their services. The coalition gathered in a dead system called the Hollow. It was an ugly place. The Dominion had stripped it of every resource and left only rocks and dust behind. But it was hidden and forgotten, the perfect place to build an army. Ships arrived every day. Karathi warships with crews eager for revenge. Mirren science vessels carrying experimental weapons. Vox fighters that danced through space like living things. Even a few stolen Dominion cruisers, now flying new colors. Then the humans arrived. Dr. Yuna came first. She was 73 years old now. Her hair was white and her hands shook slightly, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. She had refused to stay behind on Earth. "I raised those children," she told the coalition commanders. "I will not let them fight alone." She had brought a medical frigate with her. It was not a warship. It had no weapons and thin armor. but it carried supplies for 1,000 wounded soldiers. Yuna herself would lead the medical teams. General Taiho came next. He was old too, but he still walked straight and proud. Earth's government had debated for months about whether to join the war. They were afraid. They did not want to anger the Dominion. Taiho did not wait for them to decide. He brought 10,000 volunteers. Soldiers who had seen the recordings of the Crucible Liberation. Medics who had heard the stories of suffering. Engineers who wanted to help build something better. They were not an official military force. They were just humans who could not stand by while others suffered. Humanity has always been divided, Taiho said when he arrived. We fight each other over foolish things. But when we see evil, we cannot ignore it. Not the best of us. The coalition now had 300 ships. It was not enough to defeat the Dominion directly. Their empire had thousands of vessels. But it was enough to hurt them. Enough to inspire others. Enough to prove that resistance was possible. Kira gathered all the leaders together on the night before the final battle. They stood on the bridge of Ren's Promise, looking out at the assembled fleet. Ships from a dozen species floated in formation, their lights twinkling against the darkness. Tomorrow, we face the Third Fleet, Kira said. They outnumber us. They have more guns and more armor and more experience. By every measure, we should lose. She paused and looked at the faces around her. Sora with her one good eye. Haniel with his brilliant mind. The Vox leader with his broken feathers. Taiho and Yuna, who had given her everything. But the Dominion does not understand what we are, she continued. They see different species. They see weakness. They see prey. Her claws extended. Her golden eyes blazed. They do not see what my father saw when he brought us to Earth. They do not see what the humans taught us. Compassion is not weakness. Mercy is not surrender. And when predators and humans fight together, nothing in the galaxy can stand against them. She raised her fist. Tomorrow, we show them what happens when the pack hunts. Tomorrow, we fight. 300 ships answered with a roar that echoed across the fleet. The final battle was coming. The Third Fleet arrived at the Hollow expecting an easy victory. 200 Dominion warships emerged from jump space in perfect formation. Their hulls gleamed with fresh paint and polished armor. Their weapons hummed with power. Their crews had been promised glory and rewards. This would be the day they crushed the rebellion forever. The Supreme Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance. It was the largest ship in the Dominion Navy. Its weapons could crack planets. Its shields could stop a small moon. He looked at the coalition fleet and laughed. These are the rebels that frightened the council? He said. Barely 300 ships. Half of them are held together with rust and prayers. His second-in-command nodded eagerly. They are nothing, Supreme Commander. We will destroy them within the hour. The Supreme Commander settled into his throne. Begin the attack. Show no mercy. The Dominion fleet surged forward like a tidal wave of metal and fire. They expected the coalition to break and run. They expected panic and chaos. They did not expect the trap. Bora had spent weeks preparing the Hollow. She had seeded the system with thousands of tiny drones, all connected to a single network. They were invisible to Dominion sensors. They waited in silence among the asteroids and debris. When the Dominion fleet charged forward, the drones activated. Explosions bloomed across the enemy formation. Ships that had been flying straight suddenly lost power or steering. Weapons that had been charging went dead. The Dominion advance stumbled and scattered. What is happening? The Supreme Commander roared. Report. His officers scrambled to understand. Their sensors were confused. Their communications were jammed. They could not tell friend from enemy in the chaos dot, and then the coalition attacked. Kira's voice rang across every ship in her fleet. All units, begin the hunt. They did not charge head-on like the Dominion expected. They split into small packs and attacked from every direction. Vox fighters swarmed around the largest ships like angry insects. Karavi cruisers struck at weak points and retreated before the enemy could respond. Human destroyers held the line, absorbing punishment while their allies flanked. It was chaos. It was beautiful. It was exactly what Kira had planned. She commanded her fleet like an alpha leading her pack. She did not give detailed orders. She trusted her captains to know their roles. When she saw an opportunity, she howled into the communications channel. Her wolves responded instantly, converging on the target with deadly precision. The Dominion had never faced anything like this. They were used to enemies who fought in straight lines and followed predictable patterns. This was different. This was hunting. General Taiho led the human ships from the destroyer unbroken. His tactics were different from Kira's. Where she was fast and fluid, he was steady and patient. His ships formed a wall of fire that the Dominion could not break through. Every time the enemy tried to concentrate their forces, Taiho's guns punished them. "Hold the line," he said calmly. "Let the wolves do their work." The battle raged for hours. Ships died on both sides. The darkness of space was filled with fire and debris. But slowly, surely, the Dominion began to lose. The Supreme Commander watched his fleet crumble around him. 70 ships destroyed. 40 more damaged beyond repair. His advantage was disappearing. "Impossible," he whispered. "This is impossible." He made a decision. If he could not win the battle, he would end it by killing the enemy leader. He ordered his flagship to charge directly at Ren's promise. The Eternal Dominance was 3 times the size of Kira's ship. Its guns blazed as it advanced. Kira's shields flickered and failed under the assault. The Supreme Commander broadcast a message on all channels. "You are vermin. Your species is extinct. These human pets you have brought will join you in death." Kira's voice came back, calm and cold. "My father taught me that a cornered wolf is most dangerous. The humans taught me something better." She paused. "Never corner something that can call for backup." At that moment, new jump signatures appeared across the system. 137 ships emerged from nowhere. They were human vessels, military warships bearing the flags of a dozen nations. Earth's government had finally made their choice, but the ship at the front of the formation was not a warship. It was a small medical frigate with no weapons and thin armor. Dr. Yuna's voice filled every channel in the system. 15 years ago, a father gave me his children because he had nowhere else to turn. I promised him I would keep them safe. Today, I keep that promise. The human fleet crashed into the Dominion formation like a hammer. The Supreme Commander's advantage vanished completely. Now he was the one who was outnumbered. Now he was the one being hunted. The Eternal Dominance tried to retreat, but it was too late. Kira's pack surrounded it. Human ships blocked its escape. The Supreme Commander watched his mighty flagship get torn apart piece by piece. Duri led the boarding party personally. He cut through the ship's defenders like they were made of paper. Jie fought at his side, her rifle spitting fire. Together, they carved a path to the command bridge. They found the Supreme Commander cowering behind his throne. Surrounded by guards who threw down their weapons the moment they saw Valari claws, Duri grabbed the Supreme Commander by the throat and lifted him off the ground. The reptilian scales were pale with fear. He had spent his whole life terrifying others. He did not know how to face fear himself. "Please," the Supreme Commander begged. "Please, spare me. I will give you anything." Duri looked at him for a long moment. He thought about his father, who had died fighting this empire. He thought about the millions of slaves in Dominion chains. He thought about all the suffering this creature had caused. He wanted to kill him. He wanted revenge. But then he thought about Yuna. He thought about what she had taught him. Revenge was not justice. Killing a beaten enemy proved nothing. He dropped the Supreme Commander to the floor. "You live," Dury said. "Not because you deserve it, but because I am better than you." He dragged the Supreme Commander before the galaxy's cameras. Broadcasts went out to every planet in Dominion space. Trillions of beings watched as Dury spoke. The Dominion told you that we are weak, that we are prey, that we are nothing. His voice was steady and strong. Look at us now. We are the wolves. We are the humans. We are the coalition of everyone you tried to break. He released the Supreme Commander, who collapsed at his feet. Run home. Tell your masters what you saw. Tell them the Valari are not extinct. Tell them humanity has entered the war. And tell them this. He placed his paw over his heart. The Alpha entrusted his cubs to humans. Now those cubs have come home. And we brought an army. The war did not end that day. It continued for another decade. But something had fundamentally changed. Species that had cowered now resisted. Slaves that had submitted now rebelled. The coalition grew stronger every year. Eventually, the Dominion signed a peace treaty. Their empire did not collapse, but it stopped expanding. The slaves were freed. The conquered worlds were given independence. Kira addressed the Galactic Senate on the day peace was declared. She spoke of her father's sacrifice and humanity's compassion. She spoke of a future where no species would be hunted to extinction. In the audience, Yuna watched with tears in her eyes. Taiho stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. Ren would be proud, he said quietly. Yuna smiled through her tears. They all would. On a small blue planet called Earth, in a city called Bizon, a monument stood at the place where a father had once said goodbye to his children. The inscription was simple. Here, an Alpha trusted strangers with everything he loved. Here, those strangers kept their promise. Here, the pact began. The stars no longer belonged to the strong alone. They belonged to everyone brave enough to fight for them, and the humans and their wolves would make sure it stayed that way. Forever.